And I've made you presenter, so
Okay.
you can upload your presentation, and then we can just mute. And I guess this is our sound test as well, because you sound okay.
Yeah, you can hear me no problem?
Yep.
Okay. Sounds good then. Let me get to the presentation. Did you send Manpreet the invitation?
Hanji.
Okay. Okay, should I go through the different slides to see it got fixed?
Sorry, I meant, yeah, go ahead. People are logging in right now, so we'll go on mute.
Okay.
So it looks okay.
Yeah, that sees fine.
That's okay as well.
Fixed. Oh, I forgot that one. That's okay. I'll no time to fix that now. That's okay. I forgot that one. That's it.
So we'll put it on the first
Yep.
slide,
Okay,
and
and we'll mute.
Okay. ठीक है जी. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you all for logging to the webinar today. Just a quick status update that we will be starting in approximately 5 minutes. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you all for logging into this Sikh Research Institute webinar today. My name is Jagdeep Singh. I will be the host for today's session, and Manpreet Singh will be the moderator. Manpreet Singh will begin the presentation shortly, but before he starts, we'll take a few moments to run through some information to help us ensure that this session runs smoothly for all of us. Manpreet Singh will then provide some information about the Institute and Manpreet Singh before handing over to Manpreet Singh. Firstly, just to provide some orientation of the screen you're looking at now, Manpreet Singh's presentation will be displayed on the left-hand side of the screen, and you'll be able to see each slide as you scroll through, and that you won't be able to navigate through the slides independently. On the right-hand side of the screen, you should see a number of smaller panes, and if you can't see any right now, then please click on the Panels drop-down menu, which is towards the top right-hand of the screen, and select the Reset to Default option. You should now be able to see a participant panel and a chat panel. In the participant panel, you'll see all other participants in the channel in the session, and towards the top you'll see Sikh Research Institute, Manpreet Singh and Manpreet Singh under the panelist title. During the session, if you wish to ask Manpreet Singh questions at any time, you can do so by entering your question in the chat panel, which should be beneath the participants pane, and sending it to Manpreet Singh. Alongside your question, please include your full name and your city and an indication of whether or not you have a mic attached to your computer. Manpreet Singh will moderate the questions as applicable and forward them to Manpreet Singh. If you have a microphone, Manpreet Singh will invite you to come and ask a question. If you do not, then Manpreet Singh will read your question out to all the participants. In order to keep the session interactive, we do recommend you will have a microphone installed. Please note, if you have a microphone that's integrated into your laptop or your desktop, then you will have to press the control button while you speak. At the end of the main presentation, there will be a general question and answer session. If you'd like to ask a question during this time, again, please forward your questions to Manpreet Singh only using the chat panel, and you'll be invited by Manpreet Singh to ask a question. And again, please provide your name, city, and indication of mic in your message. If for any reason you experience any technical difficulties during the session and you can't see the main presentation, for example, then please don't hesitate to contact me via the chat panel. If you lose your internet connection, or if you have to restart your computer during the session, then you can easily rejoin the session by clicking on the URL that is included in your original registration email. Finally, at the end of the presentation, we will launch a testimonial and feedback window, and would appreciate if you could take a few moments to provide your feedback and comments on how the session went and how we can improve future sessions. I'll now hand you over to Manpreet Singh, who will provide some information, some background on the Institute, and also introduce Manpreet Singh. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Manpreet Singh. I'll be your moderator for today's session. We're all delighted to have you with us, even on Valentine's Day in America. Before I introduce Manpreet Singh, who will be your presenter today, let me take a few minutes and tell you a little bit about the Sikh Research Institute, also called SikhRI. SikhRI is a community development organization focusing on education programs. Just to give you a quick snapshot, over the last 5 years, we've established Civic, the only Sikh leadership development program in the world. We developed SOJI, the first ever K-12 curriculum in language and heritage for Sikh children. We're facilitating Liv, the first and only 60 webinars connecting learners worldwide, which you guys are going to be able to enjoy today. We have a cultivated Sevada program, the first ever workshop to train staff and personnel of Sikh institutions. We supported 35 and the Widow Colony, films that seek to educate and motivate the Sikh diaspora. And we've created a global reach from USA, Canada, England, Scotland, India, Pakistan, and even South Africa. The unique thing about SikhRI is that we're here to educate and inspire. We're not here to tell anyone what to do. We're not here to preach. We're here to provide resources for you to make the best educated decisions you need to make. So let us begin our session today. Your instructor will be Manpreet Singh. A little bit of background on Manpreet Singh. He is a technology professional who's currently working for a multinational high-tech firm as a director of emerging technologies. His passion is SikhRI and Panthik-related community projects, and he's heavily involved with Sikh youth camps, retreats, and conferences where you conduct seminars, lectures, and interactive workshops on Gurmat-related topics. Inderpreet Singh is also an active volunteer and a member of the advisory board of the Sikh Research Institute. He also serves on the board of advisors of the Sikh Scholarship Foundation. Today's topic will be confronting death, and let me just hand it over right now to your presenter, Inderpreet Singh.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Hope everyone can hear me fine. So I'm quite used to this whole webinar technology. As Manpreet Singh mentioned, I'm in the technology industry. I don't know how many of you have attended a webinar before, whether in your professional careers or in the SikhRI context. Feel free to ask questions by chat, but if you also want to speak and pass your questions all through Manpreet Singh, that would be great. I also thank Jagdeep Singh, who's standing by with all of the logistics and technical details. The first question that must be coming to everyone's mind is, what kind of topic is this, confronting death? On the surface of it, it looks like a very complicated, emotional, personal topic. And then on the other hand, you know, all of us have experienced or thought about it, or experienced someone in a family, friend, community. The world is a lot of destruction going on in the world right now. Yesterday, I think, at least in the United States, there was a sudden crash in Buffalo. I've been going through the news about Australia, and not only was there death of humans, but destruction of such huge, vast natural resources. So it's day to day, it's in front of us. And so one of the motivations for this topic is actually at the Sikh youth camps. For some reason, my fascination with this topic is the fascination of youth and kids and everyone with the topic, to be honest. So I thought it would be a good idea to talk about this from the Gurbani or in the Gurmat perspective. So we'll do a little bit of, I want to go over today's hukam that came from Darbar Sahib. We'll ask ourselves a little bit of introspective questions, things that we may have experienced, and then go through a Gurbani-based approach, something that is like in our traditions and our disciplines when it comes to death, various facets of death. What are the attitudes and precedents of some historical figures? We can only talk about really death, or I can, of historical figures. Probably these will be ideal examples of how people experienced or encountered death-threatening type of scenarios. So, but hopefully we can also then take all of this kind of informational perspective and apply it to ourselves and see what we can do from that. Question and answers towards the end or during the middle of the talk are also appropriate. So, Darbar Sahib today, so it was actually last night in Punjab, but today, this morning, I was quite surprised and interested to see what type of hukam Guru Sahib has blessed us with. It's on page 731. It's in Rag Suhi by Guru Ramdas Sahib. And one of the things that struck me first when I was starting reading the first line is exactly the topic of death comes up here. Chuka dar jamke. But Baraldi took, let's go with that first. Mere man gun gavo ram naam har ke, gur tutthe man par bodhya har piya ras gatke. So, as is with a lot of hukams from the Guru, the Sambodhan, the mind is being talked to. Guru Sahib is talking to his mind, which is, and then you take it from the perspective of we should be asking this of our mind as well. We should be encouraging our minds, and our minds are the one that is the impetus for our actions. So it's all interrelated with how we lead our life. Gun gavo Ram naam har ke. Gun, virtues, sing. Ram naam har ke. The identification of Ram. Ram comes from Ramya Haya, all pervasive Vaheguru. Har is also the immanent within all creation. So, be one with that universe, with that one universal truth, Vahaguru. That virtue, if you lead your life according to that virtue, where you understand and know that everything is under the hukum of creation, do that. And what happens after that? Gur tutte man par bodhya. Once again, the main emphasis here is on the man, or the mind. Par bodhya means to awaken, jag jana. So my mind awakens if I sing the praises, sing the virtues, which means live a virtuous life, and the Guru is graceful. Gur tutte man par bodhya, and as a result, that sweet nectar of Har, Vahaguru, Har piya ras gatke. The metaphor or the imagery over here is, thandi lassi on a really hot day. You drink that lassi, and it's so tasteful, and you relish it. If your actions in life are virtuous, and if the Guru is graceful, your life will be, you will relish the way you live your life. So that's the point over here. The emphasis is grace of Guru, awakening of the mind, living a refreshing life. And what happens when you do that? Man har naam aradhya, gur sabad Guru, gur ke, sab ichha man tan puriya, sab chuka dar jamke. All of these issues and concerns that I have with what do I want in my life, what am I going in my life, and one of the biggest issues that a lot of us have is, when am I going to, or when my death comes, when my time ends, will I have lived a fruitful life? These issues and concern is what Guru Sahib refers to over and over again in Bani is Jam da Dar, the fear of death. The fear of death is because we don't know what happens after death. We don't know what, what really, am I going to come back? Did I do a good job while I was living? Because ultimately the judge of that is ourselves and our connection with Vahaguru. So that dar of Jam, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more, is also becomes inconsequential. The fear of what's going to happen after I die, or when will I die, or how will I die, that becomes inconsequential. Why? Because I have lived a virtuous life. I'm living a virtuous life in connection with Hukum. So you'll find this theme very often coming in Guru Granth Sahib, and the Hukum for today, very appropriate, very apt. A little bit more of the Hukum, let me read. Sat Sangat Uttam Sadgur Keri Gunagave Har Prabh Ke Hari Kirpa Dhar Melo Sat Sangat Ham Dhove Pag Jan Ke Ram Naam Sab Hai Ram Nama Ras Gurmat Ras Rasak Ke Har Amrit Har Jal Paya Sab Lathi Tis Tiske. I wanted to talk about Ras and Tis over here. Guru Sahib has done a little bit of play of words. And I'm no linguistic expert, but Professor Saab Singh's Darpan and some of the things that I have learned across actually through the Sikh Research Institute and SikhRI. He's talking about over here the Ras on the first line, Gurmat Ras Raske. Ras over here has an onkar underneath. It is the nectar or the taste, so the with a capital T. So Vahaguru's taste, or the taste of living in consonance with Vahaguru's Hukum. That is through the Guru Mat, Guru De Rahi, because there's a SikhRI on the Takhta of Gurmat. So through the Guru's and through the inspiration of the Guru, I will relish the sweetness of that, the sweetness, capital T, quote unquote. Okay, Har Amrit, and Amrit everyone knows is literal translation, ambrosial nectar. However, Baikan Singh Nabba's Mahan Kosh tells us that it's made of two words, and Mrit. Mrit has to be, guess what? Death. It is, so it is, Amrit is non-death or immortal. So the immortal nectar, it's also a standard connotation of Amrit and ambrosia, it's a nectar of immortality. But over here, this Jal, the Amrit Jal, Paya, so we attain that connection with that Vaheguru is what he's talking about over here, Guru Sahib. Sablati Tis, the first Tis is from Trishna, the thirst. Sablati, all my thirst goes away, Tiske, because of that. Okay, so very interesting, that line as well. Connotation, whenever you see a connotation of Amrit, like I said, that death is, part of our lives. We experience friends, families. Death is also how Guru Sahib has defined our relationship with Vaheguru. Amrit is like a word that has been used in so many different contexts in the Guru Granth Sahib, and is part and parcel of the Sikh tradition. There's a deathlessness or immortality connotation associated with Amrit as well. Hamri Jat Pat Gur Sadgur, Ham Vechyo Sir Gur Ke. Another connotation of death a little bit, if I may stretch it a little bit. Vechyo Sir is to sell my head. It can be a figurative or a metaphorical that it's of course an ultimate submission. But Vechyo Sir should remind us of the very popular and famous line of Guru Nanak Sahib, Joto Prem Khilan Ka Chao, Sir Hat Tali Gali Meriao. So take your head and put it on the palm of your hand and come walking down my path. And what I have done over here, Guru Sahib says, Hamri Jat Paat Gur Sadgur, Ham Vechyo Sir Gur Ke. I have completely submitted everything in my being to the Guru. I have surrendered. And Jananak Naam Paryo Gur Chela. Now, because of that, I am now the servant, the ultimate servant of the Guru, and Rakho Laj Janke. And Guru Sahib, or Vaheguru, because everything is in your hands, the one asking that I ask, the one request I have is Rakho Laj, is protect my honor. You are my honor. So, very appropriate Shabad for today. It kind of sets the context of what we're going to talk about. I thought before we start and give you a little bit more Gurbani perspective, let's take a little bit of an introspection. I have this on the slide, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open a poll. So very soon you should see on your Windows a poll tab or a poll screen. It should come up. You have 3 minutes to answer 3 simple questions. Have you recently experienced a death in the family or of a close friend or of anyone where you were involved with? How did you feel? Obviously, I just chose randomly a few feelings. Maybe everyone will have, a lot of people will have the other. What did you think upon experiencing the death in the family of a close friend? What are the things that went through your mind? Did you think about your own life and death? Why is death necessary? Why is this, the nature of the universe? What are my coping mechanisms if a death does occur, or something else? So if you can take some time, you have a couple of minutes left. Take your time to answer this. I'm actually not too sure if everyone will, once this poll closes, I may be able to publish the results, but I'll walk you through the results of this. If I was doing this live with an audience, you would have a paper and pen sitting there. I would actually ask people to write just for themselves. So do this after you do the poll. If you're done with the poll, take out a piece of paper and pencil and just write what your thoughts are for this family member, for this friend, or for your own self and your relationship with that concept, this principle of death. What's going through your mind, and make it a little bit more elaborate. Sometimes when we write things down, our feelings and our associations with these things become more clear. So that's what I would do, in a regular type of environment. But of course, this one is you do it on the webinar. Looks like everyone has completed already. That was good. In 2.5 minutes, I'm going to close the poll. they're going to wait until the 3 minutes are up. But I can tell you, according to the first question, approximately 72% have recently experienced a death in the family or of a close friend, whereas about 26% haven't. No one felt angry. 42% of you felt sad. A few people, one person felt nothing, but there were other emotions, like I imagined, who definitely would be. When such a event occurs in our lives with friends or family or others, what are the thoughts that go through our mind? It was pretty much even split between all of the answers. About 30% had some other feelings. 30% were, looking at what are my coping mechanisms, what are options, or work towards that, and about another 32% about thinking about my own life and death, and in perspective when someone else passes away. A couple of you thought, why is death necessary? What is this whole natural, phenomena of death? And so these are very valid, standard questions. I just think that it's worth sometimes in just for 4 or 5 minutes think about this. But because we do think about it every day probably, or in some different forms, but when you think about it in an organized fashion, it kind of clarifies the kind of questions that one would ask. So me personally, thinking about life or death is standard. There's nothing to be guilty of. There's nothing to be sad about, and nothing to worry about here. And the reason why I say that, in my personal experience, is this is what Gurbani tells me. This is what Gurbani tells me, is think about your life. And I'm going to give you a couple of slides later. You're going to find that, at least from a Gurbani perspective or a Gurmat perspective, when we look at it, we will see that death and life, or birth and death, they're interrelated, principles, interrelated natural phenomena. This is a slide that I always pass through really quickly, just to show that we have a framework through which we talk about these kind of things. Like Manpreet had mentioned in his introduction, one of the unique aspects of the Sikh Research Institute and all of the volunteers, lecturers and presenters is I am not going to tell you today, everyone, this is what death is, and this is how it is based on Guru Granth Sahib and our history and our scripture and our discipline. However, I will give you facets of it. I will present the information, and then it is up to you, the individual, to make that connection with that principle or concept. The framework is what we have in our ultimate resource, Guru Granth Sahib, Bani, scripture, how that has been lived through history, Tawarikh, by Sikhs of the past, and how, as a result of the Gurbani and as a result of our history, how our current discipline, our current rehat, our current traditions, lifestyles have developed as a result. And so when we take a look at only from these three perspectives, can we really get a concrete, balance between what this concept is all about. And by the way, in the middle of that triangle there, you see the word Gurmat. And I've done this exercise many times in my classes and lectures. Put any topic in that triangle: death, life, marriage, relationships, meditation, anything that you can. And if you want to know it from a Sikh perspective, you must look at Bani. You must look at historical precedent, primarily of our prophets, of our gurus, but also of Guru Sikhs of the past. And you must look at the traditions that have developed of the Sikh community over the centuries. So when I take it from this, then I see another trend in Gurmat principles, that everything is an integrated approach. There is not, everything is two sides of a coin. No one can tell me that the heads of a quarter or the tails of the quarter, which one's the top side, which one's the bottom side. all it is two sides. There's no first, there's no second. But all of these items that you see over here in the different colors, I'm trying to be creative and make the presentation colorful as well. Sant Sipahi, Miri Pidi, Tan Man, Sangat Pangat. And even in the way when we talk about it in Sikh parlance, we never say Sant and Sipahi. We believe in this philosophy or this concept of Sant and Sipahi, or of Sangat and Pangat. We don't even put the and, or Sangat Ate Pangat. We don't say that. We say Sangat Pangat Di Maryada, for example. So thinking about the parlance that we use, everything is an integrated approach, even though it looks like a dichotomy. It looks like it looks like a duality. It's actually an integrated. So then I noticed that birth and death, Janam Maran, in the Guru Granth Sahib, many times you will see Janam Maran. We're going to talk a little bit about Avagon, coming and going. It's very interesting that when you look at death, you also have to look at birth. Now, the literal translation of Janam is birth, used in the context many times in Gurbani. Ye Janam tumhare lekhe, for example. That means life. This life so birth and life are kind of interchangeable many times in the Guru Granth Sahib as well. So when we're going to go through the Gurbani and also think about some Gur Sikhs of the past and what their attitude was, you will notice that the attitude is all about life rather than just about death. So I thought that would be an interesting aspect to it. Okay, so now that was kind of a whole kind of prelude to the kind of things that we're going to talk about. So what is death? I mean, from a physical perspective, of course, Wikipedia can help you. Some doctors who might be attending this know very well what are the scientific definitions of death as well. Senescence, for example, was a term that I found that it was a scientific definition associated with that. But it's basically a cessation, a stopping of all vital functions of the body in living beings. One of the things that is kind of obvious to all of us, but still maybe we've got to dig a little bit deeper into it, is that death comes to everyone. There may be mythological references of the past, of immortality, and those that never die. In regular parlance, Greek mythology, and others as well. In the Sikh context, Guru Sahib is very clear. Here is just one sample, and there are many more samples in Gurbani which say the hukam, the natural phenomena of life and death, is applicable to everyone, except two entities. So, Jo aya so chalasi, amar so gur kartar. So all who come must also depart. So Jo aya so chalasi, amar, eternal, or this immortality idea, is only gur and kartar. So Guru and Creator. In Asakivar, very similar line, Jo aya so chalasi, sab koi aayi wari hai. Whoever comes must go. Everyone will have their time to depart. So that's kind of, I think, maybe there's not much discussion around that it's part of a standard progression of natural law. It's part of hukam. But the question that we must ask is that in the SikhRI context, is death talked about? Is it related to always in a physical realm, or are there other realms as well? So Guru Sahib gives us a very interesting, facet of death, and he says that nothing really lives and nothing really dies. Nah kich janme, nah kich mare, apan chalat aap hi kare, avan javan drisht andrisht, agyakari tari sab srisht. Basically, everything is running in hukam. So we have to denote these happenings in natural law with certain words, with certain concepts. According to the divine order, the divine hukam, everything is in hukam. Everything is a flowing river. It's just happening. So life and death, na kich janame, na kich mare, Apan chalit aap hi kare. Everything is part of Vaheguru's hukam. Okay, so that's great, but how does that help us? Everyone obviously has probably understood or heard in different studies of Sikhi that the goal in the life of a Sikh is to become one with God, right? Take it a little bit deeper. What it really means is to live a life. Your actions must be in tune with the hukam of God, with the hukam of Vaheguru. So that's what it is. But if you now, let's go to another facet of it. Guru Sahib also explains that death is probably not a physical thing for me. What's sometimes important is death occurs to me when I forget you. Akha jiva visre mar jao. So for me, yeah, there's physical death. That's a progression of natural law. But what's very important for me, something that I want to get across for myself and for Sikhs, is when I am chanting, and remember this is my own personal interpretation of chanting, of Nam Japna, of meditation, is living an active life in consonance with hukam in any way that you can. So when I am in tune with you, Vaheguru, I'm alive. When I'm not, I am dead. And that happens, another interesting interpretation that I have heard, and that happens every day. So this coming and going, this living and dying becomes a metaphorical thing for some, whereas it's also a metaphysical thing as well. But anyway, Nanak jit vela visre mera swami, tit vela mar jai jio mera. Jio over here means soul, or breath or life, heart. But so O Nanak says that moment when I forget my master, at that moment my soul dies. So here's another facet of death. We looked at in the previous slide, we looked at the physical facet, but then again there was another one which says that nothing's really physically dying or living. This is all part of creation. Now we're looking over here and we're saying death is when I forget you, Vaheguru. And so it's a death of the mind, really. It's a death of, when I am not in tune, when, quote unquote, bad deeds have taken over my action versus good deeds have taken over my action. That is as good as being dead. So another very interesting facet of death, from a Bani perspective, is when I forget you. If there are any questions as we go along, feel free to send them over to Manpreet Singh, and then he can forward them to me. Otherwise, I will keep going on. Another facet of death. Now, who would want to die? I don't think anyone wants. Everyone wants to live a very, fruitful, prosperous life for as long as we can. This goal of death that I put over here in this slide, I wanted to show, and I wanted to give everyone a warning. Now, when I take these Gurbani tuks and put it together, I'm very cognizant of the fact that many Gurbani quotes can be taken out of context. So it's very important to, whenever we are presenting quotes from Gurbani to explain a principle or an idea, that different facets of it are looked from different areas within Bani and within the whole Shabad itself. So I was quite diligent in doing that, but obviously there may be certain mistakes and certain things can be interpreted differently as well. So, but goal of death, goal is death. It's kind of a sentence that goes there. Goal is death of ego while living through the Shabad. These are the ideas that I try and present from this slide over here. I'll take the second one. Gurmukh hove so home mare sacho sach dhihavaniya. One who remains guru oriented. So mare literally means kills, but we're talking about home here. So it's literal translation of is ego. So it's subduing the ego, where the ego doesn't control the self controls the ego. So subdues or kills ego, and thus imbibes sacho sach, the truest of the true. Okay, so goals should be gurmukh hove, so one who remains guru-oriented, or through the guru, kill the ego, or let the ego die. And this doesn't happen. So this whole concept of death, everyone thinks is that, okay, at the end, or at the end of our life. But Guru Sahib over here is saying, Moya jit kar jaiye, tit jeev diyan mar mar. Okay, I have come to know that to reach my true home after I die, Moya jit kar jaiye, tit jeev diyan mar mar. I must conquer that death while still being alive. Once again, this is Guru Nanak in Siddhi Dag is explaining, and this whole concept is what type of life I should be living. And then this one line in that Shabad is saying that I have come to realize that the kind of life I should be living is where I should have killed my ego while I was living. Right? So Moya jit kar jaiye, tit jeev diyan mar mar. And how is that possible? First of all, okay, I must kill my ego. I must do it while I'm living. And how is that possible? Sabad mare se maran sawar hai, har ke gun hirday urtar hai. So immersion in the Sabad, the wisdom as bestowed to us by the Gurus of Vaheguru, the wisdom, eternal wisdom, immersing in that, living our lives according to that, that is the way that I must die. And by enshrining these virtuous qualities, so har ke gun, remember har ke gun, virtuous qualities of that all-pervasive in my heart, that is the method, that is the methodology of killing my ego while still living. So we talked about physical death. Then Guru Sahib says, you know, there's this whole thing is part of hukam, living and dying. They really don't exist. They're as good as not existing, or don't. Basically, the teaching there was that don't, consume your mind with the fear of that. Then over here it says, and then, but if there's any death that you should be thinking about or worrying about, it is killing your own ego while you're living. So I promised that this subject matter was going to be looking at death from different angles. Once again, I'm not saying that this is the way to look at death. All of us, based on which state of mind we're in, what are the experiences of life that we've had, may pick up any of these and may relate to any of these different facets. True death. Now I'm going more into kind of the Sikh bhavana, the Sikh psyche, and the Sikh attitude of death. Guru Sahib is describing, and Kabir Ji, Guru Amar Das Sahib, and all of the Gurus have presented that everyone thinks of death, but let me tell you, what type of death really makes sense, and what's really worthy of being called a death. Kabira, marta marta jagmua, mar bhi na jane koi. No one really understands what death really is. No one really knows how to die, but that type of death is true death, where I will never have to die again. Aisi marni jo mare bahut na marna hoy. Right? Now, let's take it from the whole, and the next slide is about, I'm sure everyone is dying to talk about, and because this is the #1 question in Sikh camps and retreats, and what is this stuff about transmigration and the Janam Maran and the 84 lakh June. But my point over here that I want to just touch upon is that you can take it either the physical Jones, the coming and going, but it could also be that so whenever I'm in tune with you, I'm alive, otherwise I'm dying. Whenever I'm tuned in you, I'm alive, otherwise I'm dying. That cycle should not repeat. The true one who has achieved anything is who is continuously attuned. So one can interpret this as that perspective as well. In the same section, as you can see, both of them are on the same page of the Guru Granth Sahib. Further below, Guru Amar Das Sahib also adds in, and this is, by the way, this is from Avar, so it's part of the sloks. Gur Parsadi Jivat Mare Hukme Bhuje Soy, Nanak Asi Manni Jo Mare Ta Sad Jivan Hoy. So if someone really knows how to die, then they are truly the one who are living, is what Guru Sahib is explaining over here. True death is the death courted while yet being alive, recognizing the hukam by divine grace. So once we are in tune with hukam, basically our ego has been killed or has died, and that is where death will never come again. So this context of death, the true death, is in the context of hukam. Hukam vich rehna is ego da marna, right? So living in hukam is the equivalent, according to this context of death, of the death of ego, is living in hukam. So I think for the next aspect of death, this is I just have one Gurbani Tuk, but I want to read a few things above and beyond that kind of give a perspective of this whole cycle of birth and death. Okay. So and you know, you can pick up many different articles written about death. There are many books also written about death from the perspective of SikhRI, or the perspective of other faiths as well. One of the things that we truly believe is this Sacho Upajay Sach Samave Sache Suche Ek Mea. So all of us are sparks of the divine light. And just like sparks might emit from a fire, the sparks come back into the fire itself. Similar metaphors one must have heard about waves in an ocean. As the waves come out of the ocean, they seem like they're separate, but they're part and parcel of the ocean itself. So, man tu jyot sarup hai, apna mool pachan. So that's a fundamental precept of our faith, is that in every being, in every human being, and being as well, the jyot of Vaheguru exists. So that's the first line. But jhuthe aave khabar na pave, duje ava gaun pya. And those that can't relate to that, or don't live their lives trying to achieve that understanding, they are stuck in this whole duality, or this coming and going issue. The ideas regarding that are as a result of those that have not taken the effort or achieved that whole state of being where they have come to truly imbibe this precept, ki ik onkar, the precept, where everyone is one with Vaheguru, the same thing. So this is for me, at least personally, something that is like I said, comes up in camps and seminars all the time. People are always thinking about it. In the historical context, if we take this fear of death, this need or desire to break this cycle of death has been discussed considerably. So I want to present a few different things. First of all, very interestingly, so Paikan Singh Nabha, as all you know, is the Mahan Kosh, Gurmat Martand are some of his publications, which are just huge amounts of information and knowledge is available in there. Under the heading of Avagon, which the cycle of birth and death, he has just an explanation of what different fates or during different time frames of human existence, what are the three different forms of this Avagon that have been understood. And one of them he calls the doctrine of pre-existence. So it's Purav Asit. The doctrine of pre-existence is that when jad koi bachcha paida hunda hai ta us le rab usse vele nawa atma nahi sirzda. So the soul has existed in the past, but when the child is born, then that soul becomes part of that child. So this doctrine of pre-existence, where the soul has gone before that birth takes place, that has been obviously the question of considerable debate amongst different faiths and religions. Second perspective is this doctrine of transmigration, or he calls it metempsychosis. And this is really avagaman. This is kind of the perspective that the Indic faiths, where the coming and going is not necessarily purely of human form. It can be of other living beings as well. So animals and different levels of animals, and then the human being being one of them. Then the third perspective is the perspective or the doctrine of reincarnation, where the soul is coming and going in the different forms of humans. So he says over here, Manukh da Atma is sharir to pehle purkh ja isti roop vich ta janam lenda reha hai. So it's been coming and going in either a male or female form, but the soul remains one. Slightly different from transmigration. Transmigration, the soul is passing through different life forms. Reincarnation, he presents in his encyclopedia of Sikh literature called Mahan Kosh. He presents it as reincarnation is where it's in the human form. Now, what I must take it now from another book of his, which was posthumously published. It's called Gurmat Matand. It is two, by the way, these are all in Punjabi as well. I have heard that the Mahan Kosh is being translated into English. A certain portion of it has already been done. But the Gurmat Matand presents, and this is also in kind of an encyclopedia style, it presents the different facets of Sikh tradition and Sikh, subjects of Sikh interest. And Avagon di Samapti, so the ending of this cycle of birth and death is something that he presents. And he says, Gurmat nu man vasa ke jad purush kukarma to man pherda hai ate shubh guna nu chit vich nivas dinda hoya guru updesh par amal karda hai tad agyan da nash hoke Gyan da prakash hunda hai, and ta avagon khatam hunda, basically is what he's saying. So he says that the breaking of this cycle and birth or death only happens through the guru and through enlightening our mind. Enlightening our mind doesn't mean just to remain a vegetable after the mind is enlightened, but being active in this world. So our actions are converted, and our actions are inspired by an enlightened mind. So that is the way of breaking the cycle of birth and death. Last thing, I'm just going to read to you really quick, Principal Teja Singh, outline of Sikh doctrines. He writes that basically man does not start his life with a blank character. He has already existed, and obviously this is male gender related, but it's a gender neutral. That was the form of writing. It was in the early 1900s or 1930s. Man does not start his life with a blank character. He has already existed before he is born here. He inherits his own past as well as that of his family and race. All this goes to the making of his being and has a share in the molding of his nature. But this is not all. He is given a will with which he can modify the inherited and acquired tendencies of his past and determine his coming conduct. If this were not so, he would not be responsible for his actions. This will again is not left helpless or isolated, but if through the Guru's word it is attuned to the Supreme Will, it acquires a force with which he can transcend all his past and acquire a new character. So here's the key, I think, for my whole point about this cycle of birth and death. Yes, in some form or another, in different faiths, as well as in our faith, it may exist, but the goal is not the breaking of this cycle and death. Otherwise, we are confined and we're living out of this goal. The goal is the process. The goal is attuning with Vaheguru's will, through the Guru's wisdom, living a virtuous life. And so this is my interpretation, looking at all these different sources. I'm sure there are other, more interpretations, other ways of how it's presented. So if someone has a question at this point, feel free. Otherwise, now here's a few little informational and interesting things that I want to go through. And basically, it's this some death jargon that's been used both in the Guru Granth Sahib, but also in our own Sikh parlance. 84 lakh June, everyone has heard of that. In the Hindu mythological context, 8.4 million life forms exist, half of it underwater, half of it above water. and this Avagorn. We already talked about the Avagorn, the three different perspectives, at least based on Paikansing Naba. This angel of death, that's a very another one that is brought about many, many times in Gurbani, but it is also in other faiths, other cultures. There's concepts of Dharam Raj, Jamraj, or Jamdut, Chitragupt. These are all a combination of Puranic or Vedic references. Guru Sahib uses it quite frequently, both, well, primarily in a metaphorical form. Dharam Raj, and they're all in the same category. Every one of us know the Grim Reaper. That's why I put that at the bottom of this angel of death who comes and who takes their the power they have is to take life away and send it over to either heaven or hell for judgment. One of the interesting things reading through all these different facets of angel of death is that the angel of death can be bribed. So to prolong one's life, many forms of bribing the angel of death have happened. Over the centuries, people have come up with very interesting ways and forms. Guru Sahib is very clear, once again, that living a virtuous life here and now, the jamdadar, the fear of this angel of death goes away. So attuning with Vaiguru's will, this bribing is not necessary, essentially, is my interpretation. Ajrail is the Islamic tradition. Similar angel of death concept comes there. The Grim Reaper / angel of death in the both Christian as well as Judaic traditions. There's some connotation over there. What fascinates me is this other parlance, is the kind of words that the Sikh use to refer to death. Now, once again, if people are interested, I say this always at any session I do where I refer to the Mahan Kosh, written by Paikansing Naba. If you don't have the Mahan Kosh in your family library, after this session, if there's nothing you learned from about death or not, at least do this one thing, is try to attain a copy of the Mahan Kosh with yourself. One favorite section of the Mahan Kosh for me is this area called Khalsa Boli. So this is the parlance, Principal Teja Singh used to call it the language of heroes, whereas the Sikhs have developed their own vocabulary. They don't say death, mar gaya, Fana Singh mar gaya. That's very not appropriate for coming from a Sikh perspective. What they like to say, what the Sikhs, or what we like to say is, Fana Singh chadai kar gaya. Chadai kar gaya means this expedition or going to wage battle. So death for them is just like a standard, in the days of when the Sikhs were in the jungle. They're going to wage a battle, and similarly now this has come on our lips and our tongues is Fana chadai kar gaya. Another one is this Akal Chalana. Akal Chalana really used to apply for die before the time is ripe. Akal means timeless, and so basically saying that has been integrated with the timeless, or timeless hai. Jivan Mukt, we kind of spoke about that already. Liberated while alive. So when a Gursikh, is really in tune with Vaiguru's Hukam, they're as if they're dead while still alive. And Jivan Mukt also comes in the Khalsa Boli as well. So there were a couple of those words that I wanted to mention. Okay, we have our first question. Could you please explain the concept of lekha as well? E.g. Dharam Rai jab lekha mange, to kya muh leke jayega? Yes. Okay. So same thing. So Dharam Rai. So this is where the mythological references are all required. That's why I kind of went through them quickly, but I'll do that. Dharam Rai happens to be some different references present them as Dharam Rai is the one who says it's time to leave or time to die, and then Chitragupt, two schools of thought. One is that Chitragupt is one person or one entity, or Chitra is one and Gupt is the other. But basically, their role is the accountant. So whatever actions we do, Chitra Gupt, whether they're two-person or one, are writing all of this down. And then when Dharamraj says, okay, todi wari aayi hai, you go there and Chitragut presents the account. Lekha means accounts. And Chitragut presents the accounts, and based on your good deeds or bad deeds, you're either going back or you're going forward. Essentially, that's essentially what it is. So literally, there may be certain connotations as to how it's presented. And when you take it in context of the Shabad, Guru Sahib probably, and I don't have the context right in front of me, is presenting your actions while you are living. You will basically, Jo to see what you sow, so shall you reap, simultaneously. So your actions will result in certain reactions. That's also a natural law. So Jivan Mukta is while you're living, you have to be liberated. Similarly, while you're living, the actions that you present will have repercussions while you're living, not necessarily only after Dharamraj comes and picks you up. So that Dharamraj jab lekha mange, the lekha concept, it has to do with your accounts of your actions. Hope that kind of answers that. We have to move a little bit quicker, sorry about that. I do want to present one thing in an interesting way. I try to present it. I'm really fascinated with numbers nowadays, and one. Obviously, Ik Oankar is the first letter in the Guru Granth Sahib, the oneness and the universality of Vahguru. What I wanted to present a Sakhi. Guru Nanak Sahib and Baba Mardana are going on one of their udasis. They have these excellent conversations talking about life. Guru Nanak Sahib asks Mardana, Mardana, how long do you think forward? How long do you think about yourself and what you're doing in the future? Bhai Mardana ji says respectfully, Guru Sahib, I can't think beyond the next day. I like to live one day at a time. And the story goes like this. I'm presenting it in a colorful manner as well. Guru Sahib smiles and he says, oh wow, Mardana, I can't even think past my one breath. So, those simple sakhis, this one specifically, as I learned when I was a young child, really, takes me and makes me think. This is where we have to start thinking about death. This is actually the attitude that Sikhs have. The one sakhi is how they develop the attitude to think about death. This, as the sakhi goes, is related to Guru Sahib's hukam. Ham admi ha ikdami mahot na jana. We are but humans of one breath. Probably in control shouldn't. That's my writing over there. We are humans of one breath. When our life will end is unknown. But this is the first line of the Shabad. The Rahadi Tuk is the most important, I think, because that's the attitude. Is that don't be blind and just keep thinking about your death. Think about your life is what kind of the message of the Rahadi Tuk was for me. So that was one perspective that I wanted to present. Another thing on the attitude of death, comes up many times, is what happens or how should the Sikh react when a physical death occurs in the family. I will let you know, and I'm sure everyone is familiar with that. In the Sikh Maryada, there are very succinct and clear instructions on what type of traditions to perform when upon the death in the family. In the Guru Granth Sahib, very interestingly, we have an account on the last moments of Guru Amar Das Sahib, and Guru Amar Das Sahib's instruction on how to react upon his passing. This was penned or contributed by Baba Sundarji, who happened to be a younger relative of Guru Amar Das Sahib. And Mat piche koi rog si so main mool na bhave is one line that I recall off the top of my head. Basically, do not weep. It does not please the Guru. Accept this passing of physical death, to be the will of Vahguru. Naam is the only support in the end, and sing and praise Vaheguru who Kirtan during the funeral ceremonies, for example. There was also a lot of injunction in this Ramkali Sad, it's called, of not being bogged down in ritualistic practices, because so in the context of that time, the soul, you have to bribe the angel of death, remember, so that the soul gets a nice place or gets put in either a higher caste or in a in a different place. So there would be different rituals done to ensure that the soul gets the soul gets put into a higher spot than where it was before. And it's been clear right now that the bribes doesn't exist, but it's the actions that will be judged, not what type of physical, rice balls or lamps or other things that will help in, I like to say Badevich, meaning either the Badevich like later from today or later after death as well. When you say ki age or in front of, that's the word that gets used multiple times. So anyway, there's a lot of injunctions over there, a lot of ideas presented in Ramkali Sad. It's a beautiful Bani in Rag Ramkali. I recommend those that have some time, if you can read it in Gurmukhi, great. Start reading the translation if you can. Okay, now I picked a few examples of historical Gursikhs and wanted to not present, but maybe just let's think about what they were thinking in context of death of themselves or of people around them. Baba Deep Singh, the right-hand top, when he draws that line, basically he's asking people, come with me if you want to die. Now, whether that was a physical death or whether he was saying, come with me if you submit to the Guru, just like I am about to submit to the Guru wholeheartedly and fully. I'm not talking about the story about unhone apne sir te sees lake, hath vich sees lake he fought. This image, this painting for me is he's challenging everyone to come and die with him. Something to think about how Baba Deep Singh thought of death. On the right-hand side on the top, this is a story some of you may know, some of you may not know, of Bibi Balbir Kaur. During the early 1900s, during the Gurdwara reform movement and getting the control of Gurdwaras from the corrupt, sort of property owners, some say Mahants of Gurdwaras, Bibi Balbir Kaur, first of all, challenges the status quo of male-centered activism, becomes a female activist and joins the Jathas, the quote-unquote death Jathas, Akali Jathas, to challenge the, it was obviously the British security forces in collusion with the Mahants of the Gurdwara. And if anyone wants to read this story, it's available online. You should look for Adarshak Singhania by Karam Singh. And it has been translated by Sardar Baldev Singh. But the last part of it is the most interesting I want you guys to think about. She is walking along, bullets start she's walking along with her son in her hand. She's a very young Sikh, young wife, mother. She has a 1-year-old child in her hand. She is participating in this basically suicide mission slash, I don't want to call it a suicide mission, but a morcha. The first bullet hits her son. She puts her son away on the side and says, Vaheguru, apni amanat rakh. This life that you had gifted to me as temporary custodian, you keep this. And she keeps walking along. She gets showered with bullets and she passes away. So the life of her child or the death of her child also happens to be in Hukam, and she continues on her path. The last, I have to speed up a little bit. The last story, Bhagat Puran Singh. This is Bhagat Puran Singh of Pingalwara fame. Imagine the amount of death that he saw in his life, right? So this is where I want you to think about how was his relationship to death. And this picture is a very powerful picture where he, that's for him, that's life. This person is alive, and he's probably doing an ardas. Does he mention the word death or not in his ardas? Who knows? Okay, so that's kind of what I wanted to present. I showed you, and you yourselves have to engage with Gurbani and come up with what facet of death that Gurbani presents makes sense to you. I just presented a few, kind of traditions of our faith when it comes to events of death or our attitudes of death. I just presented to you a few examples of historical figures that, and we can only guess what their attitude of death was. At the end of the day, at least I think today I've kind of tried to show you that death, just like birth, is part of divine order. It's part of hukum. What should be our attitude? This is my interpretation. At a minimum, it should be a reverential attitude. Death to darna nahi. We don't have to fear death, but let's not also forget it. Our time on this world is limited. Our actions are what are going to count. Killing or dying of ego is what's known as real liberation, and it is during living, not necessarily only after death. There are two quotes. You can guess who it is that I want to say. Physical death I do not fear. Death of conscience is sure death. And another quote by another, both people I greatly admire. Death is the bride of the brave. By the way, the first one, physical death I do not fear. Death of conscience is sure death. Baba Janar Singh Pindrawale. Death is the bride of the brave. So we go to marry death, and Professor Puran Singh, he describes his attitude of what he understands death to be in the Sikh perspective. So that's all I have today. I don't know, I was expecting a lot more questions, but Manpreet Singh tells me no questions yet. If there are any, feel free. If we can't answer them today, feel free to send your questions to an email, I think info@sikhri.org, and reference this webinar, and those questions will come to me, and I will be more than happy to talk about it. Manpreet or Jagdeep, any questions that may be coming up?
You have no questions so far. I think Manpreet Singh is going to
okay. Oh, yeah.
send you through some now.
This was this topic that we brought up was kind of a last-minute thought. When I proposed this topic, I thought it would be, oh yeah, I've done it. I did a really small mini talk about death at one of the Sikh youth camps, and I thought, oh yeah, we should be able to do something similar, but this was more complicated, and especially when especially when you can't see the reaction of the people you're talking to. Such a not necessarily sensitive, but probably emotional and very heartfelt topic. Doing over the internet. I hope I did a good job. If once again, just Jagdeep Singh, he's going to present a feedback kind of questionnaire. Please give us advice. What type of topics do you want? Do you want to take this type of topic further? What other means and mechanisms where the Sikh Research Institute can help you? Those would be really appreciated.
So I don't think we have any more questions right now. Actually, we have one. So let's take this one question, then let's conclude after this.
Okay, one question. Can you elaborate on how to kill ego? Okay. So this is a complicated, because if I knew how to do that, probably I would have done it. This is my perspective, that because I have kind of related to the definition of home in Asakiwar quite a bit. Home dirag rog hai, daru bhi ismae. So home or ego happens to be a great disease, but the medicine for this disease exists in itself as well. So essentially, killing of ego, meaning complete destruction where ego becomes nothingness, doesn't kind of apply over here. I would present it more as, don't let ego control you, but you control ego. So you have a lot of potential. If ego is used in negative form, it becomes a negative, pride. But being comfortable with oneself and using that comfortable energy, converting it into positive action, in my book at least, my interpretation is equivalent to the killing of ego. So I'll do that. I'll present it that way. So that also probably doesn't give you any advice on how to kill ego, because ego is very individualistic. There are individual ways to do it, to kill it as well. So I would, oh yes, one of the ongoing factors of embarking on this quote-unquote battle with ego, there's one factor that's absolutely required, and that is the inspiration of the Guru. So the Guru's wisdom gives us the understanding on how to tackle this thing that has existed in the past, will exist in the future, and exists today, which is called ego. And dying while alive, that understanding comes from the Guru. I think that's all the time we have. Sorry for questions. There are a couple of more, and I will make all efforts to basically answer them at a different time. Hope this was fruitful for everyone. Jagdeep Singh will take over for the questionnaire at the end. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you to Indra for interesting and enlightening webinar today. What I will do now is launch the feedback form. So you guys should start seeing it in it should pop up in your browsers. If you can't see it, for example, if you've got pop-up blockers blocked, or maybe you're using a browser that might not be supported, then please do let me know. But otherwise, you have the next 10 minutes to submit your feedback. There's about 15 multiple choice questions and a few short answer questions. But again, we'll be online. But if you have any questions, then please don't hesitate to contact me. And unless there's any reason otherwise, the webinar will end in about 10 minutes time, and everybody still logged on will automatically be logged out. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Just to let you know, there's 5 minutes remaining, and if you haven't submitted your feedback calls, please do so, and then I close the session in the next 5 minutes.